evening. Okay. Welcome to the February 7th Board of Education meeting. Can we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Our country.
All right. Have a roll call of the board. What do you go ahead, Mr. Kristoff?
Trustee McOwen, Trustee White,
Present.
Trustee Fearon, Trustee McDowell,
Present.
Trustee Miller, Trustee Ning, Trustee Jaros,
Here.
Trustee Saunders,
Here.
and President Zamore.
Present. Thank you. All right, we're going to start off with communications from the public. Would you like to read the disclaimer?
There's no legal requirement to recognize public comment at meetings of the Board of Education. However, the board recognizes the critical importance of community discourse and involvement in the education of Mount Vernon's children, and accordingly, members of the public are invited to speak at each regularly scheduled board meeting, subject to the terms of the board policy. Any resident of Mount Vernon or any student, parent, or guardian of a student, teacher, administrator, or employee of the Mount Vernon City School District are permitted to speak. A speaker must register in advance by no later than 4 p.m. the day of the meeting by contacting the district clerk in person at this address, 165 North Columbus Avenue, Mount Vernon, New York, or by phone at 914-665-5235, or by email at rmccormack@mtvernoncsd.org. When registering, the board welcomes all respectful comment, whether praise or criticism. However, identifying and criticizing a specific student, parent, teacher, administrator, or other Mount Vernon education official or employee is strictly prohibited. Any such complaint must be presented and addressed through the proper administrative channels. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak. Up to 1 additional minute may be used for the speaker to summarize and conclude their remarks. If appropriate, board trustees and/or the superintendent and/or other staff members may immediately respond to the speaker's remarks. Give me 1 second. Excuse me.
I'm sure he would have appreciated that.
The first speaker is Ray Copeland.
Mr. Copeland? No? Okay.
The next speaker is Nadia Mondesir.
Okay.
Elias Goodsight. And Thomas Keller. I think I did see Mr. Keller.
Oh, there he is. Wow.
Who does the timer? I'll do it.
Usually we show it on the screen, but
Who's my tech person?
You was tech. He was here.
Joel?
Well,
you could start.
Okay. Mr. President, I appreciate your invitation to the public to come up and speak. You've done that on a number of occasions. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the work that the trustees done. You may not think that way, but I do. Going to 24 meetings a year, it's 2 a month, times 12 is 24. Unlike the city council, where they only have 1 meeting in July and August, I believe you go 2 in July and 2 in August. And not to mention the other committee meetings that you have to go to. A little history on the public speaking. I wish you had gone to 4 minutes like the city council did, thanks to Karen Watts.
You do have 4.
It's 3 plus 1, but you have to kind of rearrange things if you're going to talk about more than one subject. Anyway, there's been abuses in this in the past. Back under Mr. Sawyer and Stern's tenure, I think it was unlimited, and people used to defer their time to someone else. So you had situations where 15, 20 people would sign up and 2 or 3 people would speak because they would defer their 3 minutes. Then the board outlawed that. I don't think anybody was on the board that's here now at that time. Goodsight was the last one. and he's not on the board now. And people remember, I don't know if anybody in the audience that could recognize Jeff Yonkers. He would have, Oscar, he doesn't come anymore. Anyway, then this person, I'm not going to mention individuals because this person was a trustee, but she used to bring her kids to sign up, 3, 4, 5 kids, neighbors. They wouldn't speak, but they would bring a boombox and play music for 3 minutes. Totally annoyed everybody. That was ended and so forth. What kind of annoys me is what Cliff read and what Rick reads. I'm not blaming the messenger. There's no legal requirement to do this. City Council doesn't say that. City Council has no limit. You could speak for, if you had 50 people sign up, you could speak for 2 or 3 hours before they get to their actual business. Board of Legislators in White Plains, they don't say legal requirement. I don't think there's a limit there. They have a thing, there's a certain, if there's legislation, you can speak on that. And then there's another part where if there's no, you're not speaking on legislation, you're speaking on something else, you can speak of both. So anyway, I don't know if it's necessary to say no legal requirement, but it's kind of arrogant and condescending. I take it that way. It's like, you people get elected trustees, and you want to make sure the public knows there's no legal requirement. This is a representative republic, and citizens elect you. I don't know if it's something the trustees thought up, whether the lawyers suggested this, but that's the way I take it anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's like you're doing us a favor by letting us speak.
All right, I'll take that. Thank you, Mr. Keller, for actually being a participant always in this process. We appreciate that. And had I known that you were going to speak about this, I could have probably helped council strike it from the from the comments. To me, it's not really important. We could defer to council if it's necessary.
I don't know if it's necessary or not, but I do note that it's read from the policy 3220. It's an excerpt from the policy, so we're just reiterating the same policy that's the district's policy.
So what we'll do is we will ask the policy committee to take a look at that, and you could work maybe along with them to make sure that, there's no requirement for us to even read it to the public, because it's a little superfluous. I don't think it's that important. It's not important to me. We'll take a look at it, and then when you guys come back with a consensus, you could advise the board, and then we could then move to vote on whether we're going to keep it or not. Yeah? All right, thank you so much. Is that it?
That's it for public
No
comment.
more for comments? Any other comments as to Mr. Keller's requirement? No? Okay. All right. Then we could move on to superintendent's report, I believe is next, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening, all. Mr. McGrath, who's on technology tonight? Mr. Pratt, can you put the agenda up on the screen? Well, that's the same as not being up.
Scoreboard's up and running?
Do I need to do something? Do I need to hit this?
Right, this evening, first of all, this week recognizes our school counselors. This is National School Counselors Week, so I want to salute all of our school counselors. And I'd like to read this proclamation into the record, proclaiming National School Counseling Week. Whereas school counselors are employed in public and private schools to help students reach their full potential, and whereas school counselors are actively committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents, and these traits relate to career awareness and development, and whereas school counselors help parents focus on ways to further the educational, personal, and social growth of their children, and whereas school counselors work with teachers and other educators to help students explore their potential and set realistic goals for themselves, and whereas school counselors seek to identify and utilize community resources that can enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become productive members of society, and whereas comprehensive developmental school counseling programs are considered an integral part of the educational process that enables all students to achieve success in school. Therefore, I, Superintendent of School, Dr. Kenneth Hamilton, do hereby proclaim February 6th through 10th, 2017 as National School Counseling Week. I am also honored this evening to present our Nightlight Award. And our Nightlight Award nomination was submitted by Dr. Natasha Hunter McGregor and Dr. Gail White Wallace. And this evening, our award is going to a Mr. Anthony Aladano. I'd like to read for the record what the nomination says. Owner of New York Pizza in Mount Vernon, Anthony, as he's referred to, served community members on Stanford Boulevard and has supported students and staff at Graham School. He started in the early 19s and sponsored the honor roll lunch at Parker School. He also had the Parker students come into his pizzeria and make individual pies to take home to their families at no cost at all. He has sponsored the honor roll lunch, Take Your Dad to Dinner Night, where he came and served the food for the event. He purchased Thanksgiving meals for the entire pre-K program at Graham School. He donated money from New York Pizza to the Shamoya McKenzie Fund and has consistently reduced the cost of food when teachers purchase pizza for their classrooms. He has come into classrooms and spoken to children about the business and is often a guest reader. He has a pleasant demeanor, is always welcomed as he greets staff and students, and he is generous and loves the city of Mount Vernon. Most recently, he provided a financial contribution again to Samoya and supported the first marking period honor roll assembly and committed to financially supporting each marking period awards program. And we are honored tonight to present this award on behalf of our district. If you will come forward. Mount Vernon City School District presents the Nightlight Award to Anthony Aladano for his continuous dedication and support of the students of the Mount Vernon City School District, February 7, 2017. Don't be shy.
I want to thank you very much. Being part of the Mount Vernon community for approximately 27 years, even though I'm not a resident. I love the kids. I love the people of Mount Vernon. I want to thank teachers who do a great job, and they're not appreciated as much as they should be for the hard work they do. And in my little way, I try to help them when they do things for the kids. And I think it's not a thought, it's a statement. We need to take care of these kids, and they are our future. And what we do for them is they're gonna support us in our future. And the principals, the board, everybody doesn't get enough credit. And I really do, I see the kids come in and thank you, and that means so much. And I know as teachers, that means so much to you. And I thank you very much, and we'll keep going as long as we can.
That's it.
That's nice. I'm going to eat pizza there now. I'm going to have pizza.
All right.
Yeah, on Sanford. Yeah, that's nice. Very nice.
And the other thing I'd like to just bring to the board's attention, and perhaps this may be more appropriate for a committee discussion, but as you know, we are currently in our budget defense rounds and our budget preparation process. And as we are going through various reductions in certain areas that principals and department heads are seeking, we need some direction and parameters from the board in terms of our bottom line. I know we have made a commitment to go out, to the public with zero increase. That, of course, is impacted by the state aid and what those numbers look like. So I'd like to defer to the board or to the board president and ask specifically what our parameters are as administrators, or should we defer to the Budget Committee for that direction?
Sure. All right, Siri. Go ahead.
Just gonna say that we have had those discussions on the board as far as what the coming budget may or may not look like. At the current moment, I know it's been stated that we are looking to have a 0% increase, but at the current moment, we have to find those savings in the budget. There's some specific concerns on why that is. Number one being, with the new administration coming in on a federal level, is the federal level able to continue with the commitments that the previous administration have had? So one of the recommendations from the committee is that we make sure that everything that we're able to implement is sustainable. Because if it's not sustainable, the district could take an extreme hit when it comes to the grants. We're heavily funded by grants in this district, and if those programs are cut, we're going to have to find that funding from the budget. So at the current moment, and of course the president will help with the direction of this. At the current moment, we're looking at about a 2% increase in the budget, if I'm correct. That's what we ended off at, right, Ken? About a 2% increase in the budget. And the state runs have not come out, but they have sent out some preliminary stuff, and the preliminary stuff is looking at around roughly a 2% budget increase from the state. But, as you said, they're not even sure at the present moment, and we can't be definite on what that is until it comes down. So what we've asked Ken to do from a budget perspective is begin to look at some areas where we can make some adjustments and some cuts that may have some immediate impact as well as some future impact. And that's where we pretty much are.
I have a couple questions for you. So do we know when, let's say, the federal government is obligated to lock in whether or not we're getting federal aid in some areas or not? Or is this something that's ongoing, or is there a deadline? Like by our budget date, can they guarantee it?
The state runs don't typically come in, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, the state runs typically come around April?
Are not involved in this matter. The federal funds for this coming year will not be affected by whomever is chosen as the Secretary of Education. The state has told us we're getting 2.2% increase in our basic or foundation aid. That's $1.5 million less the increase of $500,000 in community aid, which can't be used for that purpose. So we have about $1.1 million increase in that part of our state aid. Then there's other aid increases, but they're all based on what we spend. So our building aid obviously is going up by millions of dollars because of what we're spending this year. Our building aid starts to go up next year. But what Trustee McDowell is referring to is only the basic foundation aid of 1.1. We will not know until April a firm number, but we're going to proceed. We've been advised to proceed as if there'll be something in between what had been hoped to be, which was a restoration of the foundation aid, which would give us about $7 million more, and the $1.5 million that the governor is planning. So we're looking at $3.5 to $4 million. They think will end up being the compromise, but we do not know that now.
So what is the equivalent of a 2% increase?
Well, 1% increase would, the budget's $238 million, so $2,380,000 would be 1%.
So when we once spoke and you said that an increase of, I don't know, somewhere between 1 and 2% was going to be the equivalent of 700 and change thousand, what were you speaking
That
of
was
then?
related to a tax increase, that if we would increase taxes, remember, taxes is not all of our money.
Right.
So if we increase taxes by 1% or 2% or whatever the cap would allow us to do, it would be probably a maximum of $600,000 to $700,000.
Correct. Okay, so what Trustee McDowell was referring to in terms of, maybe I'm wrong, but you were inferring possibly to a 2% increase in taxes?
No, 2% increase in the budget.
In the budget, okay.
Not in tax.
Got it. Okay, so you didn't refer to anything about a tax increase of 0 or not? Okay,
Absolutely.
got it. All right, so regarding taxes levied in the community, my opinion is that for roughly about $750,000, that was not worth the levy in the community, and I'd rather see a cutback in maybe a particular project, facilities project or something, we could take it out of there versus levying another tax on the community.
Well,
And
we do have $4.5 million that the board authorized us to put away to offset taxes in the coming years. And we had originally planned on $400,000 being used for this coming year so that there would be virtually no increase because of the bond. But we have been working to increase that number, and with the hope that we'll have more state aid coming in the future. So if we put $4.5 million, we could do whatever we want to offset taxes with that money. It's not tied to a particular year, it's just tied to what we want to do.
Understood. So now going back to what the superintendent was referring to, now that we have some more clarity, which direction would you like to hear from the board in terms of, you were wondering for direction. So the only direction that we have in terms of our ability is to levy taxes or not. So if I'm correct here, the direction would be not to levy more taxes since it's a very nominal amount, and Mr. Silva just said that we have plenty to offset it. Are you okay with that answer?
Absolutely okay with those parameters.
what I would like to do is, as the Budget Committee Chair, is not to have that conversation about not levying taxes, because if we do, then we put ourselves in a position where we made a commitment and we were unable to fulfill that commitment. What I would ask is that as the Budget Committee, that we would go back, and this meeting will be a little bit closer to finalizing the budget defense rounds, just a little bit closer to finalizing those things, and be able to bring back those recommendations to the table. As Ken Silva has begun to talk, we begin to look at where we can begin to move some of these dollars from. What we also have to consider is that every year we go at zero, we lessen the amount we're able to increase the prior year. So when you look at the 2% tax cap that's on, it's not really a 2%. Every year we go at zero. The next year, we're not able to accumulate, to collect as much based upon the previous year's increase. So if our previous year increase is zero, next year we have a problem because we cannot collect our max. So if you allow us, we're just about finished, and we're able to bring a presentation to the table, and then as a board, we can make a decision on where we need to be.
That's fine. I think I think that sounds good, and we appreciate that.
I would just like to point out one more thing, and that is the board has authorized reserves to be restricted in a number of areas. And those monies some of those monies are available. Some of them are supposed to be used over 10 years, some over 15 years. We have money there's going to be a $200,000 increase in workers' comp for next year, and we have money to offset that entirely, put away in a reserve. So we do have some means of offsetting some of the problems that we have with state aid.
Not a problem. So your committee will further analyze that and bring a report back to the board. I just want to remind everyone here, including the committee, that this community has been burdened with very high taxes as compared to their property values, the highest in Westchester County. Part of, what most of us ran on was to ease that burden on the community, and I for sure intend to help keep that commitment. I understand your concern, Trustee McDowell, regarding every year that we don't increase the taxes, we have less, that 2% equates to less of an amount that we could levy the next year off the total, which is okay. Again, when we need the money, we'll ask the community for the money. But right now, we have a series of projects that, maybe it takes a little bit longer to implement. But that's okay, because we have to give families in this town a breather. Right now, we have, as you go through different towns in the area, the biggest difference between Mount Vernon and other towns, if you look at the properties, is maintenance. And homeowners here are struggling to maintain their properties while paying taxes, and a lot of them also have to, they make the choice, but still send their kids to other schools, and so they have that double burden. So again, it's our commitment to them to ease that burden while working within our means and providing what we can to be a stable and progressive educational curriculum here. So with that,
Okay, I appreciate those
I return the floor to you.
You should also know that we've discovered that there is money that the state owes us to the tune of $4.5 million in back aid that we are requesting that they pay up. And they have acknowledged this debt. So I've had conversations with Senator Klein, and Assemblyman Pretlow. I've started conversations with various regents to help us navigate the course to recoup those funds, and I will keep you abreast of that progress in the Weekly Confidential. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
All right, regarding that, I heard from somewhere that the state said that they would pay us back in the next 20 years or something, 10? Okay, is that still the status? And now we're working with the assemblyman and the senator to maybe
Truncate that.
truncate that?
Yes.
Mr. Silver?
So the state has given us a chart that shows that they will be paying 4.5 out of the 5 million in 2027, and not until then. So we did have contact with the commissioner's office, and they wrote directly back that they could not do anything for us, and that it would have to be through our legislators. And so, as the superintendent said, we're working with the legislators, and they have said to me, they said on Saturday that they think they might be able to help us. And we put together a packet of all the details. We do have everything in writing acknowledging they owe us $5 million. This is building aid from the past.
Are we getting interest?
We are,
Appreciate it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
We're not the state's lender.
All right, move on to the president's report. Instead of a report, it's usually the president's what's on my mind. And some of the things that are on my mind right now are, number one, the proposal. I'd like to bring it to the board's attention that the Mandela School, that we're going to be reverting back to a pre-K-8 school that used to be the Columbus School. I would like to make a proposal to the board to revert that name back to Columbus at the Circle. The Mandela name would move with the Mandela students to their new building, and the current Columbus School that was formerly known as the Nichols School, which name still is proudly there engraved in the stone. I'm sorry? Well, it's the Charles Nichols Elementary School and Franco Building Middle School. So the Franco Middle School left a long time ago, so now it's still the Charles Nichols Elementary. That said, that's my proposal, because one of the things that has really bothered me about the district is that we have all these name changes, and the building, what the building is now called, is different from what's engraved in the stone. You know, there's something about heritage and preservation of that I don't know. There's different ways to honor people who come throughout the community and serve, and I don't think that each time it's appropriate to change the name of a building, especially when you still have it etched there in stone, such as the Columbus School right now, that there's nowhere on the building that it says the Columbus School. So that is something for us all to think about. We don't have to acknowledge anything further for now. But it's going to be important pretty soon as we go up to, sir?
Excuse me. My name is Raymond Copeland. I had sought to speak, but I understand you already had communication. Do you recall?
Yeah, sure, that's not a problem. After I speak, we'll bring you back up.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Yes, because we're going to have plans that are going up to the State Education Department, and those plans have to have proper school names and so on and so forth, so we will have to address this issue shortly. Another thing is, I spoke to the board before, and the administration, is the alarming rate of the declining uniform participation. As I go around to the schools that currently have uniform policies, I see more and more, or less and less children participating in the uniform program. We cannot continue to roll out this initiative without knowing as to why this is happening. And that was one of my biggest concerns, is to make sure that the participation was high so that this would not dwindle away, such as the old policies in the past when it comes to uniform. So, Mr. Superintendent, what are we doing about that? Are you aware of this? And have you spoken to the school principals in terms of questionnaires to parents, asking parents why they are not participating in the school uniform program?
We actually had our extended, and I didn't know this was on your agenda, as you know. We actually had a cabinet meeting today, extended cabinet meeting today, which includes our principals, supervisors, and vice principals, and this very subject came up because I have also noticed that fewer students are participating in the uniform. And I shared my experience as one of the first, at the time, principals in New Jersey to implement the school uniform policy, and shared some strategies. For instance, since you cannot penalize students for not wearing them, you can reward students for wearing them. So to do random inspections and random reward incentives to encourage that, but also, since our plan is to fully implement it in all elementary schools in September, to revisit the survey, even using the robocalls as a survey opportunity for our parents to get that rate back up. I will then, and I didn't say this part to them, I will then be initiating a superintendent's award as an incentive to the school that consistently demonstrates the highest participation rate in the uniforms. So right now, our standard is a minimum of 80% of the parents have to agree to go forward with the implementation of the uniform policy in order for me to approve the schools to move forward with it. And the expectation has been clearly outlined that all schools will be implementing it next year, and those that have started to experience a decline, that they will address that. One of the things that happens with the uniforms is parents buy uniforms that are sometimes seasonal. So when the weather changes, they generally don't have a full set of uniforms to get them through. So one of the things that I told the principals to do is to begin getting the vendors to come out now and getting parents prepared for the warmer weather, which may mean uniform shorts or skirts for the girls, and getting that conversation going, revisiting sweaters that match the uniforms for the colder weather. So these are some initiatives and some ideas that would help to further increase and expand the mandatory uniform policy.
So are we taking surveys right now? How are the principals determining the reason for the fall off?
Well, they had not addressed that until today. So
Okay.
they got that information today.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's very timely. That's great. And
I think one of the issues, I don't think we're pushing it down enough, because I'm a huge proponent of uniforms, and I think we need to push it down more to where more people on the ground, because while you sit here at the Board of Ed, that's great, and you have a great vision, we need to get the building staff excited about it, and that they're pushing it down to their parents. PTA meetings, they're constantly bringing it up, and having that conversation around what do you need? How can we make this happen? How can we improve this? But if we're only having this discussion once every 6 months, 7 months, then we're never going to be successful.
Well, I've actually asked the principals to take advantage of Parent Participation Day, which is next week, the 13th,
Yep,
February
Monday.
13th. That would be a great opportunity for them to really revisit the conversation where it's already in place, and to introduce it where it's not in place. So they also have that information.
Do we think maybe it may be beneficial for us to get some type of parent committee? We need some soldiers on the ground that can help the administration. Why? Because you're extremely busy, your administration cabinet is extremely busy, and while this is not something, I think this can be very impactful to our educational system here. So while I know you're busy, maybe we can get some support to help continue to push this initiative. So maybe we can develop another committee, a parent committee that's in support, that they can go around as well to the different buildings during the different times, whether it be Parent Involvement Day, whether it be PTA meetings. Staff meetings this should be discussed in staff meetings as well, from the principal. How's it looking in your classroom? What do you think we can do as a staff to help this? And then they can come back and say, okay, this is the information we gathered, this is what we're doing, vice versa, trying to run in and quarterback it all from here at the Board of Education.
I agree that those are some very useful strategies, but ultimately, from my perspective, I'm charging principals with that responsibility. They establish the culture in their buildings, they establish the norms, and they establish those non-negotiables in their buildings. And that was the conversation that we had with them today.
But as the board, if the board is really pushing this agenda, then we need to really try to put some fire, in a sense, into the buildings to make sure that this is being done. Because this has been since September now that we've rolled out this initiative, and honestly, this is the second maybe discussion that I've heard around it. And for us to be where we are with these declining numbers, I'm disappointed.
I just feel it's a lot of the weather. The little girls those little cotton pants are not getting it.
Right.
In this kind of weather. So maybe if we could add sweatpants with even with the logo Mount Vernon or MV
Sure. Well,
on it,
the first thing is that
will help
what we need
for
to-
the winter.
Absolutely, and I think that's definitely probably one of the causes. So the first thing we have to do is we have to know exactly what it is.
Yeah,
So
we
we
have
should
to
have,
find out.
every child that doesn't come in with a uniform should go home with a note to the parent address to the parent as to why they don't have a uniform.
But are we legally allowed to do that since uniforms are not
We
mandated?
can ask, but we can't penalize.
We can't penalize, but we can
Okay,
ask,
but we can
right?
ask.
So we can have a survey, and that way, if it's a money issue, maybe we could help
Exactly.
somehow. I mean, we just have to know if it's a change of weather issue. And then the other thing that we have to implement now that this is our first year is, I know that we've done this for our kids, is organizing a uniform swap, right? So that now that, let's say these younger kids, they're moving up, their uniforms are going to get larger, so now they'll sell, right, their uniforms in the swap, so you could, so each school could have a day where they do uniform swaps, and parents could come in, buy, gently used uniforms and swap at a discount versus buying everything new and those other parents having to throw them away. Now they could use that money towards getting the other ones. Now, we do have the benefit of having the PTA president, Lorna Kirwan, here. So, Lorna, I see you shaking your head, nodding yes, nodding no on some of the issues that we just spoke about regarding the uniforms. Do you mind saying a word about your experience with what's going on and what the PTA can do in the district to improve the
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lorna Kerwin. PTA will be willing to work with the schools, the principals, to at least get this out to the parents. At every PTA meetings, what I would encourage the PTA boards, the individual schools to do is to talk about the uniforms, to encourage the parents to send their students in uniforms. And to Ms. Wonder's point, Trustee Wonder, is that maybe we could implement, as you said, sweatpants, maybe like for gym and so forth. That would help. But of course, I would speak to the individual schools with the PTAs and encourage them to speak to the parents at each PTA meetings. And to also, Parent Involvement Day is a big day in the district, so I would send out an email to all PTAs tomorrow. I'll let them encourage their parents to send their students in uniform. That I would definitely work with.
That would be fantastic. It needs to be a priority for us, especially before we roll out district-wide. We have to make sure that we have the foundation in these 3 schools that will support that. But thank you very much. All right. Is that it on that issue? Yeah? Okay. Next is before and after care. I noticed that, Trustee White?
No,
Okay.
no.
Before and after care, I know this is a topic that we spoke of before. I had inquired, actually, I believe, with the district FACE coordinator, Mrs. Bromley, regarding that, because I had a parent who called me and said, hey, why are we doing it at one school and not doing it at the other? And I understood that that was something that's run by a third party. And I was reading it in the confidential that you're in favor, as I am, as well, to maybe perhaps look into rolling this out to more schools via an RFP. Can you speak to that?
Yes, so this is a huge concern that we have in our community, that we do not have ample before and after care programs in place for our youngsters. I am of the opinion, and council disagrees, that this would be a great opportunity as a revenue-generating possibility for the district. But absent that advice, there may be an opportunity for us to put together a proposal, particularly as we talk about bringing pre-K on, that parents will need care before school starts for those parents who have to get to work earlier, and some structured activities for students after school, not just our preschoolers, but some structured activities after school where students are supervised so that parents don't have to be at school at 3 o'clock to pick them up, which is a huge concern. I also think there's a safety to generate some revenue by renting the space to an outside agency that does that. So,
Well, before we engage in the RFP process, can you develop a plan to present to the board, and then we can move into the RFP?
Well, that's what I think he said,
Yes.
right? Yeah, I think that's what he said. As far as I'm concerned, even if it meant net zero to us as a district, I think it would be huge, huge help to the community to have that. So either way, and I'm leaning towards the net zero on this, as again, parents are really burdened, but I know that it's to rush to try to pick up your kid at 3 o'clock, and it puts a lot of pressure on the parents. I know that at my kid's school earlier, that they used to charge $10 an hour every hour extra. So it also gave the parents an incentive not to try to, do this if they didn't need it and to take advantage of it, of the resources. So, I mean, that's just something that you guys could think about. All right,
I'll put
fantastic.
together something and present it to the board, and then ask for your authorization on that plan.
You may know better than I. Isn't there a component, something like this, that has to do with community schools?
There is, actually, and Senator Klein actually spoke Saturday. I met with him last week before last, and then he spoke about it again on Saturday, that he actually has some funds that are available that he will allocate to Mount Vernon in particular, based on a community school concept, and I'll be working with his office to further develop that. But that may be a way for us, quite frankly, and I hadn't thought about that, that may be a way for us to jumpstart this.
Fantastic. Good. All right, Trustee White, you want to say anything? All right, just checking. Just checking. All right. Another thing is that as I was taking a walk through the high school with a community member, the bell rang, and out came the students, and out came also a lot of F-bombs, N-bombs, and all the other different language bombs that you could think of. I really think that establishing a culture of more adequate and reserved culture in the schools is something, especially at the high school levels, is something that we should look into and to see how we can accomplish that. I know it's a little difficult.
No, it's funny because everything you're talking about is what we talked about today. Dr. Orman, you want to talk about our work on culture today with our principals?
Starts in the elementary schools.
It's amazing, actually, that we're on the same page like that.
Good evening, everybody. So today with our administrative team, we've really focused in on 4 tenets, which are core to reform: leadership, instruction, culture, and systems. And so those are the 4 tenets that we've really been permeating through our work throughout the year. So Dr. Hamilton and I, we've been doing a lot of work with our advisory council, and then that trickles down to the cabinet level, so then we do a lot of work with our principals. Today's meeting was an extended cabinet meeting today, which is all of our administrative team: supervisors, assistant principals, standards administrators, directors, everybody. And what we did today was a culture event, and we did a activity called a privilege walk. And we talked about the care. And in the privilege walk, we asked for about 10 volunteers, and they were great because they trusted us to do this. And Dr. Hamilton read up about 44 different statements, like if you were born not in this country, take a step backwards, or if your parents both had a college education, take a step forward, and if you've ever been embarrassed because of your race, ethnicity, sexual preference, gender, go. And what we found after this whole sequence of events and activity is that there was an incredible disparity. And our point was, and Dr. Hamilton's next question was, now if the people that are up front and in the middle and in the back, if Dr. Hamilton said, now I have $10,000, and the first one to get it can have it, who would get it? And the point was that it would be the ones that were privileged. And how are we addressing the children in our care, in our classrooms with that care of the kids that aren't there with us? And how are we leveling and closing that gap? And so we really talked reflectively about a culture of care, about meeting the needs of every kid, about kids having to work extra hard. That was one of the real good comments that came out, is that because I have been, had bias against me, I have to work even harder. And so what is the culture of care in each one of our buildings? Very powerful, reflective discussion, caused a lot of emotion within the group. And so that is just one example. We had talked the other day about a conversation, and just from our perspective of raising the standard for security in the high school, I engaged in a meeting with a consultant, and we are actually meeting with the high school principal and his staff on safety drills, addressing the staff, working with the staff on what a hallway flow looks like for kids. We also spoke, Dr. Hamilton mentioned that the high school just presented in Albany on their work that they've been doing on school reform. And we were there, Dr. Walden, myself, Dr. Bennett Conroy, Denise, and their whole team in Albany. It seemed a long time ago, it was just last Monday. And one of the things that came from the presentation is that schools wanted to visit us. So the principal and his team have actually had several meetings about what does that look like if we're having visitors in our school. So all these other focuses and forces moving speak to not just a reaction where we could say, poof, the door's open and now everybody's respectful, but it takes a lot of diligence and hard work, and it takes it from a leadership perspective, from a systems perspective, from a culture perspective, and from an instructional perspective, so we're hitting them in a very strategic manner throughout this whole entire year. But thank you for that opportunity to share.
And the issue about the culture is charging the principals very specifically about the culture that you establish in your buildings, even the culture that I try to establish here in central office. One of the things that we have to do is get a standard greeting. When people call the Mount Vernon City School District, how are people greeted on the telephone? So we're putting out a standard greeting. Everybody will answer the phone the same way because that feeds into the culture. Do adults speak to kids when they pass them in the hallway? Is there an expectation that adults speak to each other when they pass them in the hallway? So charging the principals with raising their expectations about what kind of culture they want to cultivate in their buildings really gets to the issues that you're talking about. And then the next piece to that is really expanding the role of our parent liaison so that we can help empower parents and create a safe environment where parents can come in and may be comfortable enough to say, you know what, I don't know how to deal with this issue, or I don't know how to address this particular problem with my youngster, and providing them with the resources to do it. Because at the end of the day, as I said earlier today, when the bell rings at 3 o'clock, they're still going home. And we have to help our parents reiterate those standards that we try to establish at home for those parents who are working. And regardless to where parents are, regardless of their race and ethnicity, regardless of their heritage or their socioeconomic status, everybody wants the best thing for their kid. And we have to help them reach that goal for those who don't have the tools and resources to do that.
Correct. So at what point do the faculty and staff there speak to the kid or speak to the students? Is it in the classroom? Because everything has to be followed by an educational process, right? So even every day when the bell rings and they're starting off, to say a word about it, to say a word about the culture. Maybe every class starts off that way. But at what point and how do you plan to introduce it to the students to let them know that it's not okay to say all these words like this and speak like that in the hallways, especially not there? And sometimes, you know what, in life there's a time to turn it on, and when you go home, you're having fun with your friends in the backyard, then you could go back to it. So when do we have that conversation? How do we present that conversation? Because it needs to happen, especially if you have folks coming down from Albany to see how well you guys did, and oh my God, Mount Vernon sounds like an amazing place, and they come down here, they walk through the hallways. How do we start that conversation with the students?
Can I just ask a supplemental question to go along with that? Is do student discipline, how much of that, and like student codes of conduct, how much of that is uniform district-wide and how much of that is different based on what school you attend?
It is uniform.
But is it really uniform or just on paper uniform?
On paper, I would imagine.
I ask that
think,
seriously.
One of the conversations we're having right now, quite frankly, is I'm reviewing a couple of things: staff attendance and student attendance and suspension rates, and looking very specifically at what programs and services are in place for students who are, in my opinion, being excessively suspended, and coming up with an alternative to suspension, which will have a community service component to it. It's in white paper form right now. The intent is to present it to the board for adoption for the start of the school year, so that we're really gnawing away at the habit of sending kids out because they are not compliant, so to speak. But the uniform, the discipline code is consistent throughout the district. There's a high school, there's a middle school, and there's an elementary code that's shared with parents in the student handbook at the beginning of the year. And I think it's pretty consistently enforced. Now, I do think, to President Zamora's point, that after you hear the F word so many times, you kind of get numb to it and you ignore it. Like I experienced it at the game Friday as a little boy. He couldn't have been more than 10 years old behind me, and he was going in. And I pulled him aside and I said, does your mother know you talk like this? And he was so apologetic and so embarrassed that the superintendent called him out on it. But that's what it takes,
Right.
in other words, is adults pulling kids to the side and not demeaning them in front of their friends, because that'll never get you what you want, but really holding adults responsible for setting standards in the buildings, and when kids don't meet that standard, holding them accountable for it.
So, anyway, I guess you guys will report back to us and let us know how you plan to implement it, to introduce it to the students, to try to get them to at least think about it, right? And calling them out on it and in an instructional way.
Yeah, and there are a couple of other things that Dr. Hamilton has worked with Ms. Gayon in looking at the superintendent's suspension hearings, which, Micah, speaks to your, is it really happening or is it really happening? They have really gone deep this year to say, hey, let's do this the real way, because it may have not been something that held accountable, but more of a process.
And then the last part to this is also I've noticed the conduct in the hallways are not necessarily appropriate when it comes to the relationship between security and the children, right? And so I've seen a lot of inappropriate behavior between security and the children, from security threatening the kids, speaking extremely loudly to the kids in a very derogatory manner. And so the educational process needs to also be brought to the attention of the security personnel, because they should be examples of how to do things, and shouting at them, yelling at them, threatening them is not necessarily the way to go about it. I know sometimes when you're in that environment and afterwards you're like, hey, you're just walking around for the first time and you think it's easy. No, I don't think it's easy. But that's what being a professional is all about, all right? Maybe pulling the kid to the side, gently telling them, hey, look, this is what we expect of you, so on and so forth. You can't stay here. There's a reason why. Help me help you, whatever it may be. But if we're not following through in terms of teaching the security personnel or reinforcing what our codes of conduct are, even at that level, then they're going to fail us as well. The other day, I was in the hallway and I heard a loud, screaming and yelling, and then when I looked, it was actually someone, I'm not going to say a name, but has been here with us, at board meetings, and I was kind of like, oh, you? How can you be speaking so loudly and saying these type of words in the hallway? And they were just joking around with a student, but still, it's very inappropriate. So we have to get the message down to everyone in terms of what appropriate conduct and behavior is in our buildings, and especially as it relates to the students. You get, the way you treat someone is what you get back. So when these security personnel are yelling at the kids, screaming at the kids, what do you expect? You're disrespecting them in front of their peers, so now they may do the same to you, so don't be so surprised. There has to be an educational component. I guess you will speak to Mr. Rosario about that, and kind of maybe, do some type of continuing education for the personnel over there.
That last piece, I know, because this is great dialogue for us. The activity we drew today came from something called the Culturally Relevant Curriculum from the AVID program of setting an atmosphere, a culture of college and career readiness. And so part of that additional curriculum, which I passed on to our FACE coordinator and our assistant superintendent of school improvement just the other day, was conflict resolution processes and strategies, bullying strategies, and the environment exactly that you're speaking of. And so I really appreciate you bringing this to the forefront here, because that's another accountability stuff that we can use to make sure that what we're implementing is sustaining itself, and all of those different variables approaching it, hopefully that switch will go on. And I could give you tons of examples. Just last week during our staff development day, we actually had our 22 National Honor Society students giving the staff escorts to their professional development rooms. You and I had a great conversation about getting more tutors employed, and so that positive behavior that we want to model in the classrooms and in the building, we really want to exemplify and show those good examples of exactly what we're talking about here.
That's right, and I think they become also great role models, those students, to the others, and they become the ambassadors of good behavior. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to conclude and hand the floor over to one of our residents that wants to.
Mr. Copeland.
Oh, that's Mr. Ray Copeland? Welcome.
Way out. Based upon how the district was being led. No way out. No matter how hard we try, we always came up short. Which remind me, when I was on the farm, working hard, picking cotton, No matter how much cotton we picked, the white man said, you're short. No matter how much you pick, you come up short every year. And you got to try to start over again. My father was a Yasso man. If you don't know what that is, when one man pumped fear into another, he become a Yasso man because he's scared. I grew up like that. Not understanding that my father was a Yasso man because he was trying to keep his family and himself alive. Because just like it is in the world today, they kill you and nothing done about it. Our young children need to know that. The sacrifice and what we came through. I would love to have the opportunity, along with some other community peoples that I know, that need to share that opportunity with our children. Seeing is believing. I heard someone say just now about the uniforms. The uniform is so very important. It changes a child's behavior when he's dressed in a uniform, rather than showing his behind. If we can convince them some type of way, the dress code, I would push it, push it, push it. Because when you dress properly, you act properly. I have a business on 4th Avenue in the 500 block that leads up from Longfellow in that area. And when I see the children coming out of school every day, ripping and running and using that language that you just mentioned, I too pull them to the side. Come here, come here. Why are you acting like that? Come on, you've got to do better than that. Don't do that to yourself. And like the gentleman said, if you approach them in the right way, most of the time you get across to them. And I do it on a daily basis. Because I had someone to pull me to the side and whip me for misbehaving. It was not my parents. I won't advise y'all to do that today. Jail. But however, it's worth a try. I would love to have the opportunity from the board to visit the schools and share some of my growing up in the Carolinas. They just don't quite understand. Like I said, in 1994, we tried to take over the district, and we was not successful because we always came up short. In 1996, and we could not understand why we were short, because we knew we had picked a lot of cotton. Why are we short? Because we allow other people to count our votes. Understand why you're sitting there as trustees. It wasn't always like that. And those people that were sitting there didn't have the best interests of our children. In 1996, we took over the district. And we ran it the way it should be ran. Although we made some stumbles in the beginning, and people was questioning us, well, y'all ain't doing no better. And they would come to me because I was one of the front persons out there. Copeland, they ain't doing no better. Give them a chance. They never traveled this way before. Of course they're gonna make mistakes. Give them a chance. So as I sit here today listening, I'm impressed. I haven't been to the school board meeting for some time because I heard so many nice things about Joe, including you, Dr. Hamilton.
Thank you.
Including you, sir. I heard a lot of nice things about you. if you was not doing nice things, you would not have forgotten your budget. But you managed to get it approved because the community trusted you. And thank you for, I live in the Vernon Heights area, Graham Elementary. I'm so impressed. Seeing my tax dollars in the beautification at that school. I love it. You're gonna raise my taxes again, you can raise them again.
Mr. Cope,
Put it on record.
But you're going for a little bit of my money.
I really appreciate that. And Mr. Copeland, I will actually, we'll exchange numbers before we go into executive session. And I will work with you, with the superintendent and the administration in terms of a way that we can get your story into the, into the schools and speak to the children. I think that sort of relative experience is something that that they would welcome. And I really appreciate you coming here tonight and telling your story. And thank
There's
you.
a lot more to tell, but I can't tell it here.
Right.
I don't know, I haven't been here in a while. I think that the last time I was here, they had increased it from 3 minutes to 4 minutes. You're allowed to speak, because I guess my time is up. I don't see that problem.
Well, I figured in the spirit of what Mr. Keller said tonight, that we'd let you extend a little bit to show that we do listen, right, Mr. Keller? Well, thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you. And again, I'd like to see you, and so just wait a second for me as we wrap
And
up.
in closing,
Sure,
sir,
go ahead.
I'd like for the board and the trustees to maybe consider, there are certain schools that requires more attention than others as far as misbehavior of the children, how to handle them. You know, when you participate in sports, you don't leave your best team members out there the whole game and just wear them out. You have to pull them to the side once in a while and get them to get a breather. I said that to say this. Some of the schools keep the same teachers there the whole 10, 20 years that they're there. And that's in some of the areas where it's hard. Teachers soon become burnt out. It just might be a good idea to switch them around occasionally. Thank you for listening.
I like that idea. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, with that said, thank you. I believe we're going to go into the committee reports. Trustee Wyatt?
Committee report, the Education Committee, we met on Thursday the 2nd, and we had a presentation for our new reading program that we're implementing in September. It'll be implemented in the third, fourth, and fifth grade. It's called Journeys. Fantastic program. It provides students with a lot of balanced literacy for reading, writing, critical thinking, and speaking. So it's all incorporated. It's a lot of for the ENL and for our special ed population. It's all incorporated in there so that the book is there. They're having a lot of digital resources are out there for the children. And so it seems like a great program. I fell in love with it. I know my goddaughter and where does she live? Jersey somewhere. They're using it and they're having a very successful program with it. The 6th grade and the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at Pennington and at Columbus, they're going to pilot a program called Collections, which is all part of the Journeys program. So it's in continuity all the way from pre-K it will be from K all the way up eventually. So we will be they will pilot those programs. The literature for the kids. So it looks like a great program, and they're working it out. And in our March meeting, if I'm not mistaken, we will be having a big presentation on that.
Awesome.
So it looks like we're moving in the right direction. And also, I just wanted to bring up, I went to Rebecca Turner on there. They had a parent workshop, and it really was fantastic to see teachers talking with the parents and teaching that they had 6 different classes. And it was really phenomenal. And I sat in on the one for, DASA, if I'm saying it right, Dignity for All Student Acts. Fantastic. I have to commend Ms. Hudson, a social worker and the coordinator of it, and Rebecca Turner. She gave an excellent presentation. And I even learned, there's a difference between bullying and bothering. And a lot of what the kids are saying, oh, I'm being bullied, is really they're being bothered. So she has a format, it's wonderful, and if you feel that your child is being bullied, you have to ask a lot of questions. Just keep asking them questions. Why? If you see signs of them not eating or eating too much or something like that, you have to start asking questions, because there are some bullies around, but most of it is just being bothering. Kids are bothering other kids, and it's not as much bullying. But I would like to say that Josephine Kirkland Hudson did a fantastic job on that works.
Now, how do we get that rolled out to some of the other school
Well,
communities?
I would love to see her. I mean, Rebecca Turner is ahead of a lot with Jamal Doggett, the principal. He is really innovative and wants to go out and do everything. I know he started PBIS and he's training people, and I think their school is working really heading in the right direction.
They really are. Actually, I'll just share a little interaction I had with the principal over at Traphagen. When I asked her personally, I said, so which school do you think is competition for Traphagen? And I love that. There should be some healthy competition between the schools, right? And I said, is it Pennington? Is it Holmes? Is it Graham? And she goes, no, it's Rebecca Turner.
Rebecca
Like
Turner.
they keep climbing. We have to keep catching them, and that's fantastic. And I like to see that, because that's what makes us better, right? It's just like in sports, and that's why also we'd love to develop more intramural sports and more middle school sports programs in all the schools, especially now that we're doing the K through 8. I know over at Graham, sir, we have that new soccer field there. We'd like to also maybe stripe it in lacrosse and introduce the kids to some new sports activities and not just the ones of the old, right? There's a lot of competition, and also there's a lot of scholarships for those type of sports.
A lot of scholarships out.
A lot of scholarships, and our kids,
Golf now.
golf, that's right.
They're giving
And we used to have golf, as I understand. So we're going to bring a lot of that back, but healthy competition between the schools to increase also school spirit is very important. I want to, speaking of school spirit, I'd love to have an initiative where we reintroduce and refurbish the school stores so that we have spirit wear, Mount Vernon, paraphernalia, hats, T-shirts, sweats, stuff like that would be fantastic. But it's really good to see that academic type of competition. And I know the superintendent and I were discussing, honor ceremonies and things like that. Some of the schools have it, but we'd like to introduce it to all the schools, and they're working on a plan. They're going to bring it out and let us know what their thoughts are on that.
So it was excellent, and we have to watch Rebecca because they're zooming.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And usually I'm talking about Lincoln all the time. I have to give you credit.
Well, that's fantastic. All right, the Wellness Committee, Trustee Jaros.
We started a little bit of a different format. It used to be just 2 or 3 of us at the most, but there's been a renewed interest in the committee. And we had, of course, the PTA president there. We had Leslie Zamora, our school board president, and me, and 3 folks from Sodexo, 3 board members, and consultants and some other district employees milling around. And it was wonderful to see that people are very, very interested in this finally, and in just upping the ante. with our facilities and everything. We talked about a redesign of one of the areas in the high school to facilitate flow and to upgrade the cafeteria. We also talked about equipment repair that hadn't been repaired for many years, that is still serviceable but hadn't been repaired. So we're looking at repair or replacement. We're looking at 2 freezers that we need in Lincoln and Mount Vernon High School. We also discussed a little bit about the free breakfast program and tightening up the distribution and equity of the food that's served to all of the elementary school students, and it'll be also expanded to the 8th grades when everything is pre-K through 8th grade. We also discussed several personnel issues that we need to talk about.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay?
Rosemary,
Yes.
is there any way that they'll ever have hot breakfast for the younger children?
Okay. PTA President Kerwin and I were discussing this, and we said at this meeting, it wasn't the time. We will discuss it next meeting. We have decided on holding 2 Wellness Committee meetings a month, and they're each at 5:30 before the school board meeting. Whenever we're having a school board meeting, 5:30 before it, we'll have a Wellness Committee meeting, and everyone is invited.
Yeah, regarding the distribution of the breakfast, right now we're having logistics issues. So even with what we're doing now, so after we kind of fix that and have that under control, then we could speak to the next level in terms of getting the hot breakfasts up there. But logistics-wise, we don't have everything in place right now. So we want to make sure that that infrastructure is correct. Thank you, trustee.
Welcome, trustee.
Trustee Saunders, special education.
Special ed, I met with Ms. Gayon last week, and we tried to finalize our trip to the Washington, D.C. Museum of Black History. It seems like it's getting a pulse now. And so we also discussed our meeting that's scheduled for Thursday. We're going to have movie night for parents and children to show some educational movies for special ed. But there's going to be a snowstorm, I think, Thursday, so we just decided to cancel that meeting. So I think Felicia's going to send out an email blast, so some more to come. I'll let you know when we do our next meeting.
Okay, super. Now, what committee covers, I know we're doing a lot of wonderful things in terms of getting the kids exposed to different universities and colleges. I know we have some college trips coming up to Tufts University, BC, and was Harvard one of them? I'm not sure. So what committee is talking about these things? Because that type of exposure is fantastic. Getting 7th and 8th graders over to the campuses at Iona, spending the day there or part of the day.
Well, that's actually, the committee work would be the education committee, but that's actually orchestrated through our guidance counselors who do a phenomenal job with that, quite frankly. College fair is very, very well attended, very well advertised, but in terms of which committee would oversee that, it would be the education committee.
Yeah, now that'd be fantastic if you could actually speak to some of the guidance counselors about what they're doing and get a little bit more involved in that, because that type of exposure is what we need, getting our kids used to even thinking college-bound, going on those college campuses, seeing what it's all about at an earlier age so that they could start working towards that level of achievement. And that'd be fantastic. Thank you. Trustee McDowell, I guess I'm sorry, I was going to go back that way, but Trustee McGowan, sure.
Before I talk about committee, I just have to say, can we just take a moment and acknowledge what we've been talking about tonight? We've been talking about things like, uniform policies and about raising the bar, about competing within schools, about college. Compared to what we were talking about 2 years ago, like the issues we were talking about, I just have to, we have to take a moment and acknowledge the progress that has been made. If the worst thing we have to talk about on a board meeting is how to reduce profanity in teenagers, which is, we're not the first or the last to talk about that problem, we've made great progress. So that's just great. Anyway, January 26th, Trustee Miller's out of town tonight, so I'm going to talk about the Family and Community Engagement Committee. We met on January 26th. We talked about 2 things primarily. One is the upcoming First, generally, Trustee Miller has been phenomenal, along with members of the administration, in developing a real partnership with the new Barnes & Noble in Westchester, and it's really been a fantastic partnership. It's going to be a real partnership with real benefits to the district, both in terms of, quite frankly, money and donation of access to certain things Barnes & Nobles can offer and other businesses can't, but also they just have a real interest in partnering with a district like Mount Vernon that really needs that kind of access. That's going to start with a special fundraiser on Saturday, March 11th, which will be at the Barnes & Noble, where the proceeds of that are going to the district. And there's going to be additional that's an all-day affair. And then on the following Monday, on March 13th, there's going to be kind of a special silent auction, kind of higher-end fundraiser event also at the store on March 13th. And more details about that will be forthcoming, but that's coming up on the calendar that weekend, the second weekend in March. And then for the rest of the meeting, we talked for quite a long time, actually, about just it's been a few months, so we wanted to recap the Mind, Body, and Soul event, the back-to-school event from last fall. And we really had a great discussion about some lessons learned and how we can make the back-to-school event this year even bigger and even better. Fix a few things. I mean, it was really ambitious what we did, and I think I hope people mostly agree that it actually went off really well for as ambitious as it was for the first time, but we learned a lot of lessons. I think this event will be better organized. We'll have better opportunities for school spirit. We'll be using our superintendent's time a little bit more efficiently, although I'm sure he'll still be there at the end of the day. But really just new ways to make the event even better, more publicity, more notice, more access by the public, more events for more ages of kids, and just really want to make it a phenomenal event. Again, in part partnering with Barnes & Noble as well on that. So look forward to that in the fall. It's going to be even bigger, even better. And to go along with Trustee Jaros and others, if a member of a community ever wants to attend any committee event or a committee meeting, I highly suggest the family and community engagement meeting, because a lot of the issues we've been talking about all hinge on better relationships with our community, with the families of our students. So, you can access the announcements anytime on the website. You know when our meetings are. Bring your kids. They're in the community too. And help us make the district a better place.
Thank you. I know regarding the policy committee, we had a second reading tonight. If you wouldn't mind, I wouldn't mind postponing that to our next board meeting, since A, Rick is not here, and B, I had some things to discuss with you regarding some of the stuff. I just haven't had the time to articulate it over an email.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay.
You okay with that?
Yeah? Okay.
I just we're kind of getting into new business now, but Mr. Silver, is that okay with you? I thought there was a specific. That's okay? Okay.
Yeah.
So fine.
Okay.
No
All right,
problem.
Fantastic. And Trustee McDowell, budget, finance?
No, we
You
can't.
kind of went through, yes, you did, yes, you did.
There is one item that I would like to discuss in executive session as it relates to the Budget Committee.
Okay.
We'll talk about it.
Okay.
Fantastic. And as far as the Facilities Committee is concerned, there is one major issue that we've encountered at the pool. It's a little disappointing, but that's the way things are when you're dealing with old infrastructure. We were hoping that the pool was going to be ready late last year, 2016, or early this year, 2017, but it appears that we have found some major cracks in the pool because we filled it up with water and all the water drained out. There are some cracks along the walls, along the floor, and basically what has occurred, in my estimation, and the estimation of some of the experts that have seen it, is, over the years, we had water in the pool, then we didn't have water in the pool, we had water in the pool again for inspections, taking it out. We've jackhammered the bottom so that we could get the new drains for health, for the new health requirements, grounding, and so all this activity and movement, the expansion, contraction, and also after a while, the plaster coating underneath the tiles gets weak, crumbles, and now to try to find all those cracks where they exist underneath the tiles is an exercise in futility. So it appears as if we're going to have to remove all the tiles from the pool and completely replaster and reseal and redo the tile. So right now, we're going about trying to put together, the architects are working on trying to put together the experts to give us what we could expect out of that.
Sounds like we're gonna need a full presentation on the pool.
Just the
all-
pool.
All by itself.
Yeah.
I know the numbers are moving up there, and part of the reason why is we're going from an old, you know, a old system to a completely new system. So as we're making these changes, because part of the community is getting excited.
Yes.
Listen to my daughter say, well, I hope they hold it off so I don't have to swim. But, you know, then there's another part of the community that is wondering where the funds that's imminently seem to be drowning in this pool.
Yeah.
We started out with one figure, and now we are where we are. So I just, as the committee is constructing this thing, if we might as well just put a presentation and let them know that, you know, the whole genesis, the beginning of where we are.
Yeah,
Because we are well over seven figures.
Yeah.
in this pool, from my understanding.
Yes, yes.
the
Well, it
beginning,
started
yeah,
off
yeah.
with 7 figures,
Yeah.
right?
Hey, that's
it
not
did.
where we're-
Which was actually covered by a grant.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
So it
but-
started off with that, but you're correct, and I think part of the genesis is that you're dealing with something in old infrastructure, so you're hoping for the best, right? So you start off hoping for the best, and then as you know things progress, you know you have to make adjustments, and those adjustments have certainly gotten costly. However, I will remind everyone out there in the community as well, don't fret. It will be costly, but it will be worth it. Because what we're going to get out of this pool as a community, the amount of training we'll get for young kids, for lifeguard certifications, young adults, exercise for the seniors in the pool, aquatics, the benefits far outweigh the cost here. And so I think it's something well worth it. But again, I think it's something that everyone should take a look at in terms of the genesis and the cost and where we're going with it. And I believe Mr. Silva in the Facilities Department is creating that.
Yes, and we should also remember that we can make some money out of it
Right.
by
No,
renting it
absolutely.
to professional sports
Sure,
teams.
absolutely.
And I think all of that should be part of the presentation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
letting the community know, just informing the community so that there's not this lingering of how do you spend $3 million on a pool? You know,
Sure, sure.
You can construct a whole building for that type of money, but explaining the costs and showing them what we're getting out of it, and then the potential of what we can generate from it. I just think having that complete presentation helps to keep the community informed, helps to keep that transparency that we've been so eminently fighting for since I've been sitting at this table. I think it does nothing but help us.
100%, and that's why I'm bringing it to everyone's attention right now. No surprises.
Can I ask two specific questions about the pool? One is, are we looking into, is there any potential contractor liability for these overruns and these issues?
Well, no, because again, no contractor was contracted to.
I'm not asking you for a legal opinion on the spot.
No. I'm
genuinely
saying that
looking at
we never planned to let's say fix cracks in the pool. We didn't realize there were cracks in the pool, so we weren't looking for that. Nor did we contract anyone to find that.
No. I meant the people who jackhammered the pool. Did they cause the cracks?
Well, we'll never know.
There's ways of finding out.
Well,
That might be worth looking into as part of the presentation. And my second question is, didn't we recently do a bunch of HVAC work
Yes.
in the pool? And is this problem going to require undoing any of that, or is
No,
all that
absolutely
okay to
not.
stay in
That has
place?
to do. That's in the ceiling. That's
That's
air.
that's what I thought. Okay.
100%. None of the work, the drain work, none of that will be affected. This is simply
Just the tiling.
just the tiling and the surface underneath that really does most of the water retention. The tile helps preserve that plaster surface, but that's where we're at.
Right.
But we'll get into that, and we'll be having some more on that for you. The other thing during these bond presentations also that I've been, well, at least the ones I've been present at, and I just want to make everyone aware, and I believe I mentioned it here as well during one meeting. I can't remember all the things that I mentioned during all the meetings anymore. I have so many of them. But we have a very aggressive plan for this bond. And the reality is to do all the things that we need to do in this district is going to cost well over $100 million. So the $100 million is the deposit on all the stuff that we want to do in terms of restructuring the schools and bringing the pre-K through 8, the facilities upgrades, the academic vision, but it certainly will not cover everything. Now, we've listed everything that we'd like to cover, but I will say it again that my goal is to make sure that each project is a quality project that will outlive us. and not try to fit all the projects under the 108 million, but meanwhile the projects are shoddy and they will not last 10 years. So whatever project that is left on the tail end that we need to continue, we will continue it through, budgetary processes, or at some point, maybe even a secondary bond. So I just want to let that out there, let it be known, let it be said, let it be memorialized and recorded, because I don't want people to come out and say, oh, well, you promised we'd get everything within this 100 billion. We don't know the prices of everything yet. Right now, as we have this vision, we're putting it together constantly. Every time a project gets drawn out by the architects that have hundreds of pages of documents, those documents go out to bid, and then we get well, first they go to estimation, and then they go out to bid, and we have a closer idea of what that costs. And as those, and of course, we have priority projects, and the priority projects being what it's going to take to get that pre-K configuration, pre-K through 8 configuration, so that we can have our 3 high schools of excellence and structure those, and then we move forward. Then the forward motion also is going to require science classrooms in all of the other elementary schools, and room for pre-K and 7th and 8th graders, 2 segments each. So that's the vision. That's basically where we're at. We're going through it, and as we go through it, we will continue to update the community. You'll see it also develop, as you're seeing developments at Graham and Trapphagen and everywhere else in the community. But I just want to say it. It's going to be great. Everyone will see it, and everyone will appreciate it. Just like Mr. Copeland said, hey, you guys are doing such a great job. If you continue this type of work, I welcome you. More money, there you go. So anyway, that's where we're at. In terms of...
Since you just mentioned, I was walking late, do we promote the bond presentations and going out and voting and everything?
Not yet. Well, we will. Last, in terms of the reorg, during some of those bond presentations, we talked about having to move district lines. And in order to accommodate the pre-K through 8 vision. And so there are some questions that people want to know, well, where is that line going to be? Where do I fall? Where do I fit? We don't know all those answers yet. That's something that we're working through right now. The administration's working through it. We're working at doing demographic studies and figuring that out. So that is yet to be determined. And regarding the bond, yes, the bond is on March 7th. Tuesday, March 7th is the bond vote. We have, I believe, 5 polling locations.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Pennington, Mandela, Trapphagen, Graham, and Parker.
Parker.
Yes, and Parker. 5 polling locations, and everyone who is not used to those locations in terms of, let's say if you're at Lincoln, there will be postcards sent to you, and also signs at the schools to let you know where your polling location is. This was in an effort to reduce the high cost of holding these ballots, especially for a special election when we have another election coming up at the 3rd Tuesday in March regarding school budget and board.
And there will also be hands out in all the schools on Parent Involvement Day about important dates to remember, the bond being one, the fundraiser for the Superintendent's Reading Challenge being another, and other pressing matters that you need to just mark on your calendar.
All right. And while we can't tell you how to vote in terms of the bond, but we could certainly, and I believe a lot of you have also seen firsthand how we're doing of rebranding the district, rebuilding our facilities, and re-educating our children to the highest level. So I hope everyone notices that, appreciates it, and votes appropriately. That being said, I believe we wrapped up the committee reports. You wanted to do some presentations in terms of any type of anything else?
Nope, no presentations
You're good?
tonight.
All right. No
We have
acknowledgements?
some tenure people too. Do we have tenure?
You doing
people?
any
We do have
acknowledgements?
some tenure, but I usually wait until you grant.
They're not vote first.
Okay, so right, because we're doing it after. All right, so in that case then, we're going to make a motion to go into executive session. How much time do you think we'll need?
We probably need an hour.
An hour, wow. All right, so for those that may receive this tenure tonight, if you want to be here for that, you're going to have to wait. All others, you may leave if you'd like. Mr. Copeland, I will...
Oh, wait a minute, I don't see Gus.
I have some of the stuff to discuss.
I will exchange numbers for you before you leave, so that way you don't have to wait. But thank you very much. I'm going to make that motion.
I'm sorry, it shouldn't be a full hour, though.
Oh,
Should
okay.
not be a full hour.
No. Should be about a half an hour, 45 minutes.
Half an hour to 45 minutes, that's much better. All right, so I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session.
I'm sorry, to discuss matters concerning the employment of a person or persons, employment contracts, pending litigation, and collective bargaining.
Thank you. So motion, second.
I'll
Trustee,
second. I'll second.
Saunders, Trustee McCohen, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Thank you.
As soon as I need to see Gus.
Here.
Do any trustees, two resolutions have already been removed from the consent agenda. Are there any other resolutions that
Can
the
you just say
trustees?
which ones have been? So we
Oh,
know?
I'm sorry.
By the way, before we even, do we have any minutes to approve tonight?
No, we do not.
Okay, fantastic.
The one that is now marked as 15.1 is settlement agreement and general release with employee number 8281. The second one, authorization to enter into an agreement with Alicia McDowell to perform parent liaison services.
Yes. Okay.
Are there any other items that, are there any other items that the trustees want to remove from consent agenda? At this time, we will entertain a motion to approve those items that are on consent agenda.
I move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm in favor.
Opposed? Abstain? Sorry. And now to those items vote on, removed from consent agenda. Item 15.1, authorized settlement agreement and general release with employee number 8281. Will the board like me to read this resolution into the record?
Sure.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves a settlement agreement and release in connection with employee number 8281, a copy of which has been provided to and reviewed by the members of the Board of Education. Be it further resolved that the President of the Board of Education is authorized to execute said agreement on behalf of the Board. Any discussion?
Nope.
Motion for vote?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
One assumption. Yeah, okay.
Second item, pulled from consent agenda, authorization to enter into an agreement with Alicia McDowell to perform parent liaison services. Be resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, this Board of Education authorizes the district to enter into an agreement with Alicia McDowell to perform parent liaison services beginning February 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2017, at an amount not to exceed $23,500, subject to mutually acceptable agreement. Any discussion?
Yes, one quick discussion, just so that everyone knows that Mrs. McDowell has been with us from the beginning of the school year. It's just that this is the tail end of the contract that allows her to continue through the end of the year. So that's what that is. I believe that's all the discussion I'd like to have on that. And I'd like to make a motion for approval. Motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
And
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Abstain?
Abstain.
Oppose? Motion passes. Resolution
you.
passes.
And if I may, Mr. President, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate Mrs. Ivacek on being granted tenure, one of our district employees. And to welcome as one of our special education supervisors, Mrs. Chanella.
That's it, just one? All right, fantastic. Any new business? Old business?
I'm sorry, based on the discussion we had earlier, the the one item that's on for unfinished business is the reading of the policy, but that's going to be put on for the next board meeting.
Correct. Trustee McDonald?
Yeah, a couple of things. The first thing I want to bring up was a new position that I think we need to consider, and that's for our STEM program. I'm extremely excited about what we're doing and the direction that we're moving in as it relates to our new 3 high schools. One of my concerns is at the moment is, do we have someone specifically over that particular program to really help us gear that to this new 21st century? I love what Ms. Collins has done with the performing arts program that we have, and I think having someone like that over our STEM program will be tremendous to us as a district and really help us from any pitfalls that we may fall in. Having her eyes there on a regular basis as a director, not specifically over only that program, you know, she's over our gifted and
Gifted and
talented as
talented as
well. But having her professional eyes over that program, having worked in that program, I think we can duplicate that over into the STEM. Having seen the changes that's been made, I think that's something that we should begin to consider and discuss so that we don't miss anything.
Sure, yeah, we've discussed that a little bit.
Well, I know we have Satish, who's looking into it. He's visited other schools, Bronx School of Science.
Sure.
And he's been looking in, trying to get the curriculum and everything. These are on paper.
I'd like to ask the board to just give me a little time to get through the budget process, because there are actually 2 such recommendations I'd like to make pending on where we are with the budget as it relates to a planning year for our pre-K, implementation of full-day pre-K, and the implementation of our 3 high schools. But it's contingent on where we are with the budget, because this resource, in my mind, will result in is a recommendation for some additional staff during the planning phase. But I wanted to see where we are relative to our budget process before I came to you with that recommendation.
And also, I know Dr. Gorman has been working with Satish on the STEM curriculum, and they've been making a lot of headway. So whether it requires an individual, specialized to oversee that, I guess you guys could.
I think it would be tremendous. The second thing I wanted to discuss, I brought this up some time ago, is I think our district is only as good as our lowest performing school. And considering that some of our lowest performing schools have been our lowest performing schools for some time now, Dr. Hamilton, I don't want to throw this on your plate right now, but can we get a presentation or an update on what are we specifically targeting, specifically with our lowest performing schools, and how we're trying to bring those schools up to par or on equal basis, or even maybe surpassing some of our other schools, because they've been in this position, and there's no need to name the schools. We all know what the schools are.
Sure.
They've been in this predicament for a long time, and we don't spend enough time really talking about where these schools are, what we're doing to really change. Maybe they need something different than what we're doing at the other schools, because they have some different challenges that they're facing. So.
In the confidential, I share with you the progress reports and indicators of progress that we are monitoring with each school. Like last week, you just got the one on A.B. Davis. I think the week before that, you got Edward Williams, or maybe it was Columbus.
Exactly.
I
No,
forgot
it was
which one.
Williams.
It was Williams. So we are providing that information. If a public discussion is what you prefer, that's fine too. But I am sharing those reports with you, and those reports, as they are written, we're going in as a team and we're monitoring the implementation of those strategies in the actual application of improvement strategies at those schools.
Yeah, actually, through the past 2 confidentials, I was quite happy to see that, actually, this is especially what you're speaking to right now. You had even some monitoring, some drop-in unannounced,
Exactly.
and it was really good. Plus, especially with some of the schools, we've had some new principals in, and now we're supporting them and supporting PD development with all the teachers. And so I'm actually I'm looking forward, I should say, to seeing some of those results as to all the work that we're doing right now. And I know Dr. Gorman has really been working very hard with a professional team, as well as Dr. BC, in terms of moving up those schools that are indeed in need. So
And that's what kind of sparked the thought, really having some in-depth conversation and some benchmarks and some discussions around where we are over a course of time, vice versa, just implementing the things, and then as a board and as a community having no real grasp of really what the impact has been over the last 6 months.
Well, we'll be seeing those charts soon again, right?
We'll be seeing those
Charts
charts
are gonna
soon,
come back
and the
again.
superintendent's action plan, which is a huge undertaking to collect that data, because we don't just throw stuff in there. Everything that's in there is related to data and evidence that's in there. So, and that's actually an update that's going to be coming out. We're due again for superintendent status report, I believe in February, the end of this month.
I look forward to seeing some.
Good.
Okay.
Awesome.
Motion.
Is that all, trustees?
motion.
Yeah? All right, so I'm going to make a motion to adjourn this session of the board. Thank you very much for coming, everyone. So motion to suspend,
Motion?
second, beautiful. And
Congratulations.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm in
Thank
favor.
you.
Thank you, everyone.